Commander Jake Morrison stared at the vast emptiness of space through the small window of the horizon's edge. The stars looked different out here, so far from Earth that the sun was just another dot of light among millions. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child, reading about space exploration, but now that humanity's first contact with alien life was only hours away, his stomach felt tight with worry. Dr. Lisa Campbell floated next to him in the zero-gravity section of their ship, her tablet showing readings from the long-range sensors. She had spent the last 3 years preparing for this moment, learning every theory about alien contact that human scientists had developed. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her brown eyes showed the same mix of excitement and fear that Jake felt. "The signal is getting stronger," Lisa said, pointing at the screen. "Whatever sent that transmission to Earth is definitely coming from the Kepler system. The pattern is too complex to be natural. We're really going to meet them." Captain Pete Rodriguez called from the bridge, his voice carrying through the ship's communication system. "Jake, Lisa, you better get up here. Our sensors are picking up something big approaching fast." Jake pushed off the wall and floated toward the bridge with Lisa close behind. Pete was a former Navy pilot who had volunteered for this mission when most people thought it was too dangerous. He was the kind of man who flew straight into storms, without blinking, but now his hands were tense on the controls. The main screen showed empty space ahead of them, but the sensor readings told a different story. Something massive was moving toward their position at incredible speed. Jake strapped himself into his seat and checked the communication systems one more time. Everything humanity had learned about language and mathematics was programmed into their computers, ready to help them talk to whatever intelligence they were about to meet. "Contact in 30 seconds, Pete announced. "Whatever it is, it's bigger than anything we've ever built." The empty space in front of them suddenly filled with light as a ship materialized from nowhere. Jake's breath caught in his throat as he stared at the alien vessel. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, made of what looked like silver metal and crystal, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from end to end. Smaller ships appeared around it, their hulls gleaming with the same strange technology. "My God," Lisa whispered. "Look at the size of that thing. Their technology must be hundreds of years ahead of ours." Jake activated the communication system they had prepared for first contact. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge. Please respond." For several minutes there was only silence. Then the alien ship sent a transmission that their computers immediately began translating. The voice that came through their speakers was cold and mechanical, speaking in perfect English. "Primitive vessel, you will prepare for boarding. Your species will submit to the authority of the Galactic Empire. Resistance will result in your destruction and the elimination of your homeworld." Jake felt his blood turn cold. This was not the peaceful first contact that humanity had hoped for. He looked at Pete and Lisa, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. These aliens were not explorers or diplomats. They were conquerors. "I repeat," Jake said into the communication system, "we come in peace. We seek diplomatic relations between our species and yours. We do not wish to fight." The alien response came quickly. "Your wishes are irrelevant. Submit now or face the consequences. This is the final warning." Jake made a decision that would change the course of human history. Every instinct told him to surrender, to try to negotiate, to save his crew and his planet through diplomacy. But something deeper, something that had driven humans to explore dangerous oceans and climb impossible mountains, made him give a different answer. We didn't crawl out of caves and split atoms just to bow to the first aliens we meet. If you want Earth, come and take it." The silence that followed was deafening. Then alarms began blaring throughout the horizon's edge as the alien ships powered up their weapons. Pete's hands flew over the controls, bringing their small defensive systems online. Their ship had been built for exploration, not war, but human engineers had included basic weapons just in case. "Incoming missiles," Pete shouted. "Multiple contacts. These guys aren't playing around." The space around them erupted in flashes of light as alien weapons fired at their small ship. Pete threw the horizon's edge into a spinning dive, using every trick he had learned as a fighter pilot. The ship groaned under the stress, but it held together as explosions bloomed around them. "Lisa, get to the emergency transmitter," Jake ordered. "Send everything we've learned back to Earth. They need to know what's coming." Lisa unstrapped herself and floated toward the rear of the ship, where the powerful long-range transmitter was located. Their ship might not survive this encounter, but the knowledge of what they faced had to reach home. Jake watched the tactical display as Pete maneuvered their ship between the alien vessels. Two of the smaller escort ships were moving to cut off their escape route while the massive mothership hung back, probably considering their tiny vessel no real threat. "I've got an idea," Pete said, his voice tight with concentration. "These guys think we're primitives, right? Maybe we can use that against them." Pete suddenly changed course, flying straight at one of the escort ships instead of trying to escape. The alien vessel, apparently surprised by this aggressive move, failed to adjust its position quickly enough. At the last second, Pete fired their plasma torch, normally used for cutting through asteroids, directly into the escort ship's hull. The alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its crystal technology apparently unable to handle the raw plasma beam. Jake felt a moment of savage satisfaction. These aliens might be more advanced, but they could still die. "One down," Pete said grimly. "But we've got bigger problems." The second escort ship had recovered from its surprise and was closing in fast. Worse, the mothership was now moving toward them, its massive weapons beginning to charge. Jake knew they had only seconds before their ship was destroyed. "Lisa, how's that transmission coming?" he called. "Almost done," she replied from the back of the ship. "Just need another minute to send everything." They didn't have a minute. The second escort ship fired, and Pete couldn't dodge fast enough. The explosion rocked the horizon's edge, throwing sparks from damaged systems. The lights flickered, and Jake could hear the hiss of escaping air from somewhere in the ship. "Hull breach in Section 3, Pete reported. "We're losing atmosphere fast." Jake made another decision. Instead of trying to run, he activated their emergency beacon and aimed their ship directly at the second escort vessel. If they were going to die, they would take another alien ship with them. "Transmission complete," Lisa called out. "Earth knows what's coming." The alien escort ship tried to move away, but Pete had already committed to their collision course. The horizon's edge slammed into the alien vessel at tremendous speed, both ships disappearing in a massive explosion that lit up the darkness of space. Admiral Kethvar watched the destruction from the bridge of his flagship, feeling something he had not experienced in decades of conquest: unease. No species had ever fought back during first contact. They always surrendered when faced with the overwhelming power of the Empire. These humans were different, and that difference worried him. But his worry lasted only a moment. The human ship was destroyed, its crew dead, and soon the Empire would deal with their homeworld. It would be a simple matter to crush this primitive species before they could cause any real trouble. On a small moon orbiting the gas giant where the battle had taken place, 3 figures crawled from the wreckage of an escape pod. Jake Morrison, Pete Rodriguez, and Lisa Campbell had survived the explosion barely. Their ship was gone, but they were alive, and they had bought Earth precious time. As they looked up at the stars, each of them made a silent promise. The aliens thought humanity was defeated, but they were wrong. This was not the end of the story. This was just the beginning of a war that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. General Amanda Torres stood in the underground command center beneath Colorado Springs, watching as hundreds of technicians worked frantically at their stations. The massive screens around the room showed a world transforming itself for war. 6 months had passed since Lisa Campbell's desperate transmission had reached Earth, and humanity had not wasted a single day. The message had been clear and terrifying. Hostile aliens with superior technology were coming to conquer Earth. Query. Transmission included detailed scans of alien ships, their weapons, and most importantly, their apparent weaknesses. Jake Morrison and his crew had died to give humanity this information, and Amanda was determined not to let their sacrifice be meaningless. Dr. Kevin Walsh hurried across the command center, carrying a tablet filled with calculations that could save or doom their species. He was a brilliant physicist who had spent his entire career studying theoretical weapons, never imagining he would need to build them. His gray hair was messy from countless sleepless nights, and his eyes showed the strain of working under impossible pressure. "The mass drivers are ready," Kevin reported, stopping beside Amanda's command station. "We have 40 installations hidden across 6 continents, each one capable of launching projectiles at 15% of light speed. The aliens won't expect kinetic weapons moving that fast." Amanda nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed Earth's defenses. The planet looked peaceful from space, but appearances were deceiving. Every major city had been evacuated to underground shelters, while the surface installations were hidden beneath false ruins and abandoned buildings. Earth appeared to be an empty world waiting for conquest, but it was actually a trap ready to spring. Engineer Maya Foster approached from the technical section, her hands still dirty from working on the gravity manipulators that represented humanity's most desperate gamble. She was young for such responsibility, but the crisis had promoted the most brilliant minds regardless of age or experience. Her brown eyes showed both exhaustion and determination. "The gravity wells are operational," Maya announced. "We can't maintain them for long, but when the alien fleet enters our gravity field, we can create localized distortions that should disrupt their formations. The energy requirements are enormous, but we've built enough fusion reactors to power the system for at least an hour." Amanda felt a mixture of pride and terror as she looked at what humanity had accomplished in just 6 months. Every nation on Earth had contributed to the defense effort. Old enemies had become allies overnight when faced with extinction. The human race had finally united, but it had taken the threat of alien conquest to achieve what centuries of diplomacy could not. The early warning sensors suddenly activated, filling the command center with urgent alarms. A technician at the sensor station called out the news that everyone had been dreading and preparing for. "Contact on long-range sensors, multiple ships approaching from the outer system. Count is over 200 vessels, with the largest measuring approximately 3 kilometers in length." Amanda felt her heart rate increase, but her voice remained steady. "All stations, prepare for Operation Homecoming. Send the final evacuation orders to any remaining surface installations. This is not a drill. Across the Earth, the last few 1,000 people who had remained on the surface disappeared into hidden bunkers and underground cities. The planet's radio transmission stopped completely, and all visible lights went dark. To anyone watching from space, Earth appeared to have been abandoned by its population. Admiral HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Pride, as his fleet approached the small blue world that had already caused him more trouble than any conquest in decades. The destruction of 2 escort ships by a primitive exploration vessel had been an embarrassment that the Empire could not tolerate. This time he had brought overwhelming force to ensure complete victory. "Report on the target world," HFY ordered his tactical officer. "The planet appears to be uninhabited, Admiral. No radio transmissions, no visible cities, no signs of technology. It appears the population fled when they detected our approach." HFY felt satisfaction at this development. The humans had learned fear, as they should. Running away showed that they understood the futility of resisting the Empire. Still, protocols demanded a thorough cleansing of any potential resistance. "Begin orbital bombardment of the major population centers," he commanded. "Destroy any facilities that could support military resistance. We will make this world an example for other species who might consider defiance." The Empire fleet moved into Earth's gravity well, their formation perfect and their confidence complete. They had performed this operation hundreds of times on hundreds of worlds. No primitive species had ever successfully resisted the might of the Galactic Empire. In the underground command center, Amanda watched the alien ships approach their carefully prepared kill zone. Every muscle in her body was tense as she waited for the perfect moment to spring their trap. The alien fleet was moving exactly as their tactical computers had predicted, approaching Earth in a standard bombardment formation. "Range to target." "Fleet?" she asked quietly. 15,000 kilometers in closing," reported the tactical officer. "All mass drivers are locked on target. Gravity manipulators are charging to full power." Amanda watched the countdown timer on her screen, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether humanity survived or joined the countless other species that had fallen to alien conquest. Everything depended on surprise, timing, and the hope that human ingenuity could overcome superior technology. "Fire!" she ordered. Across Earth's surface, 40 hidden installations opened simultaneously. Massive electromagnetic rails launched tungsten projectiles into space at incredible velocity. The projectiles were simple metal rods, each one weighing several tons, but their speed made them more destructive than nuclear weapons. The alien fleet had no warning. Their sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and conventional missiles, could not track objects moving at 15% of light speed. The first wave of kinetic projectiles struck the Empire ships before their crews even knew they were under attack. The results were devastating. Alien shields, designed to deflect. Particle beams and plasma bolts offered no protection against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The tungsten rods punched through ship hulls like bullets through paper, each impact releasing energy equivalent to nuclear bombs. 40 Empire ships died in the first salvo, their crews never knowing what killed them. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos as surviving ships tried to understand what was happening. Admiral HFY stared at his tactical displays in shock, watching his fleet being destroyed by an invisible enemy. "What's happening?" he demanded. "Where are the attacks coming from?" Before his tactical officer could answer, Maya Foster activated the gravity manipulators. The space around the alien fleet suddenly twisted as localized gravity wells appeared throughout their formation. Ships that had been moving in straight lines were suddenly pulled off course. colliding with each other or being flung away from Earth entirely. The massive alien mothership found itself caught in a gravity field, 10 times stronger than normal. Its hull groaned under stresses it was never designed to handle, while smaller vessels were crushed completely by the artificial gravity waves. Admiral Kethvar realized with growing horror that his fleet was being destroyed by primitives who should not have possessed such technology. This was impossible. No species developed gravity manipulation before achieving interstellar travel. No species fought with kinetic weapons at these velocities. Everything his civilization knew about primitive worlds was wrong. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace, he ordered desperately. Retreat immediately. But many of his ships could no longer respond. The gravity manipulators had disrupted their engines, while the kinetic bombardment continued to tear through his fleet. In less than 10 minutes, Admiral Kethvar had lost more ships than the Empire had lost in the previous century of conquest. The surviving vessels that could still function jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of nearly half their fleet. Earth's first major battle was over, and humanity had won decisively. In the command center, Amanda Torres allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she watched the alien fleet retreat. But she knew this victory was only the beginning. The Empire would return with more ships and better preparation. Humanity had announced to the galaxy that they would not surrender, and now they would face the consequences of that decision. On the small moon where they had been hiding for 6 months, Jake Morrison watched the flashes of light from Earth's battle through a makeshift telescope. He and his surviving crew had spent months repairing their escape pod's transmitter, and they had been broadcasting intelligence about Empire ship movements to Earth whenever possible. They did it, Pete Rodriguez said with amazement. Earth actually beat them. Lisa Campbell was already working at their repaired communication system, preparing to send another message to Earth. The Empire won't give up after one defeat. They'll be back with everything they have. Jake nodded, feeling both pride and worry. Humanity had proven they could fight, but the real war was just beginning. The Empire had thousands of ships and controlled hundreds of worlds. Captain Rachel Green felt the familiar hum of the Defiant's engines as her ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Rigel system. 1 year had passed since Earth's victory over the Empire fleet, and humanity had spent every day of that year preparing for what they called the Great Payback. The ship around her represented the best of human engineering combined with captured alien technology, creating something that neither species could have built alone. Lieutenant Commander Alex Murphy looked up from his communication station, his fingers still dancing across the keyboard as he monitored Empire transmissions throughout the sector. He had been a cyber warfare specialist before the war, but now his skills were focused on a much larger battlefield. His dark eyes showed the intense concentration of someone who fought battles with information rather than weapons. Empire supply convoy is right on schedule, Alex reported. 12 transport ships with minimal escort carrying weapons and supplies to their garrison on Rigel 3. Intelligence says they're not expecting any trouble. Chief Engineer Tony Parker called from the engine room through the ship's communication system. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had spent months improving on alien technology that the Empire considered perfect. Tony had a gift for understanding how things worked, and he had used that gift to make human ships faster and more deadly than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jump drive is ready for emergency exit, Tony announced. New modifications should give us 30% more speed than standard Empire hyperspace. They won't be able to follow us even if they detect our attack. Rachel smiled grimly as she studied the tactical display. The Empire had controlled this region of space for over 1,000 years, and they had grown careless. Their supply convoys followed predictable routes. Their patrols maintained regular schedules, and their commanders believed that no enemy could threaten them in their own territory. Humanity was about to teach them how wrong they were. "Take us." "In!" Rachel ordered. "Attack pattern Delta! Hit fast, hit hard, and disappear before they know what happened!" The Defiant accelerated toward the Empire convoy, its advanced sensors locked onto the alien ships. Rachel had learned to fight the Empire by studying every battle report from Earth's defense, but she had also added her own innovations. Where Earth had fought defensively, humanity's new ships carried the war directly to the enemy. The Empire transport ships were massive and slow, designed to carry huge amounts of cargo between star systems under the protection of their vast fleet. The escort ships were small but fast, armed with weapons that could destroy most opponents. Unfortunately for them, the Defiant was not most opponents. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, reported the tactical officer. "Enemy escorts are beginning to turn toward us. I don't think they recognize our ship design." Rachel was counting on that confusion. The Defiant looked like no ship in the Empire's databases, combining human hull design with alien propulsion and weapons systems. The enemy would waste precious seconds trying to identify what they were facing, and those seconds would cost them everything. "Fire," Rachel commanded. The Defiant's main weapons erupted in brilliant flashes of energy. But these were not the particle beams or plasma bolts that Empire ships normally used. Human engineers had weaponized the same gravity manipulation technology that had defended Earth, creating weapons that could tear enemy ships apart from the inside. The first Empire escort ship simply collapsed as localized gravity fields crushed its hull like an empty can. The second escort managed to fire back, but its weapons struck empty space as the Defiant used its superior speed to avoid the counterattack. Within minutes, both escort ships were destroyed, leaving the convoy defenseless. The transport ships tried to flee, but they were too slow and too large to escape. One by one, the Defiant destroyed them, each explosion lighting up the darkness of space. But Rachel's mission was not just destruction. Alex Murphy was busy downloading every piece of information from the transport ship's computers, gathering intelligence about Empire operations throughout the sector. "Data download complete," Alex announced. "We've got fleet movements, supply schedules, and garrison strengths for 12 systems. Intelligence is going to love this." But Alex had found something even more important than tactical information. Deep in the Empire's communication logs, he had discovered evidence of something that could change the entire war. The Empire's subject species were beginning to rebel, inspired by news of humanity's victories. Worlds that had been peaceful for centuries were now fighting against their alien overlords. "Rachel, you need to see this," Alex said, transferring his findings to the main screen. "The Empire is having to divert ships from their main fleets to deal with uprisings across dozens of worlds. Our victories aren't just hurting them militarily, they're destroying their political control." Rachel studied the intelligence reports with growing excitement. The Empire's power had always depended on fear and overwhelming force. If their subject species no longer feared them, their entire civilization could collapse from within. Humanity had accidentally started a galactic revolution. "Change of plans," Rachel decided. "We're not just going to hit their supply lines anymore. We're going to make sure every species in the galaxy knows that the Empire can be beaten." The Defiant jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of the convoy and heading for their next target. But now their mission had expanded beyond simple military objectives. Alex Murphy began broadcasting the footage of their victory on Empire communication frequencies, ensuring that news of the defeat would spread to every world in the sector. Psychological warfare was more effective than any weapon. On world after world, subject species that had endured centuries of oppression began to believe that freedom was possible. The Empire found itself fighting not just humanity, but rebellions throughout their territory. On the Empire capital world of Zephyr Prime, Chancellor Vex Thol stood before the Supreme Council trying to explain how a single primitive species had managed to threaten their entire civilization. The council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all of them demanding answers to questions that had no good solutions. The human attacks are coordinated and precise, Vex Thol reported, his crystalline features showing the strain of months of military disasters. They strike our supply lines, gather intelligence, and disappear before our fleets can respond. Worse, they are broadcasting propaganda that is inciting rebellion throughout our territory. Council member Zarthen, an ancient being whose species had served the Empire for over 2 millennia, spoke with the authority of age and experience. How is this possible? Our intelligence reports described humans as typical primitives, violent but disorganized. How did they develop such advanced technology so quickly? Vex Thol had been asking himself the same question for months. The humans fought with a combination of tactics that no single species had ever used before. They combined kinetic weapons with energy manipulation, cyber warfare with psychological operations, hit-and-run tactics with strategic bombing. It was as if they had studied every form of warfare ever developed and chosen the best elements from each. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered, Vex Thol admitted. Every time we develop countermeasures for their tactics, they change their approach. They learn from every battle and improve their methods continuously. The truth was even more disturbing than the Chancellor wanted to admit. Humanity was not just fighting the Empire, they were teaching other species how to fight as well. Rebels throughout the galaxy were beginning to use human tactics, turning the Empire's own technology against them. On a hidden base in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, Jake Morrison stood before a holographic display showing the galaxy-wide rebellion that humanity had accidentally triggered. He and his crew had finally been rescued from their moon base, and Jake now served as Earth's chief intelligence coordinator. His experience with the Empire's first contact protocols had made him an expert on their psychology and tactics. The Empire is losing control faster than we hoped, Jake reported to the assembled human commanders. Our attacks on their supply lines have forced them to spread their fleets thin, while the rebellions are stretching their resources even further. General Amanda Torres, now commanding all human military operations, studied the strategic displays with the eye of someone who had learned to fight impossible odds. Earth's victory had been just the beginning of a war that now covered half the galaxy. Human ships were operating in dozens of star systems, striking Empire targets while supporting local rebellions. The question is whether we can keep this up, Amanda said thoughtfully. We're fighting the largest empire in galactic history with a few dozen ships and a lot of determination. Eventually, they're going to organize a response that we can't handle. Jake nodded, but he was not discouraged. Humanity had already achieved something that no other species had managed in 3,000 years. They had proven that the Empire could be defeated, and that proof was spreading hope throughout the galaxy faster than any fleet could travel. Dr. Lisa Campbell, now serving as Earth's chief xenobiologist and diplomatic coordinator, had been working with rebel species throughout the galaxy. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the bridge of the Independence, humanity's flagship, watching as the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history approached the Sol system. 2 years had passed since the first human victory over the Empire, and now Chancellor Vexthul himself commanded over 10,000 ships in what the Empire called their final solution. The alien leader intended to end the human threat once and for all, making an example that would terrify any species considering rebellion. Dr. Kevin Walsh floated in the zero-gravity section of the ship's laboratory, making final adjustments to humanity's most desperate and ambitious plan. His discovery had shocked even himself when he realized the implications. Empire technology, for all its advancement, had a critical weakness that no one had noticed in 3,000 years of conquest. Their ships, stations, and even planetary defenses all operated on specific energy frequencies that could be disrupted by the right kind of electromagnetic pulse. Commander Ben Carter monitored intelligence reports from across the galaxy, tracking the Empire's massive fleet movement toward Earth. His spy networks had given humanity advance warning of the attack, but they had also revealed something even more important. The Empire had stripped their garrisons from hundreds of worlds to assemble this fleet, leaving their territory vulnerable to the rebellions that were spreading like wildfire. "Final count on the Empire fleet," Ben announced to the bridge crew. 10,417 ships, including their newest dreadnoughts and battle stations. They've brought everything they have that can fight. Susan felt the weight of responsibility as she considered what humanity was about to, attempt. Earth's fleet had grown to over 100 ships in 2 years of intense construction, but they were still vastly outnumbered. However, numbers would not determine the outcome of this battle. Technology would, and humanity had spent 2 years developing something that would change warfare forever. "Status on the solar installations?" Susan asked. Kevin's voice came through. "The communication system from the laboratory. All 47 installations are operational and synchronized. We can trigger a focused solar flare at any target within the system. The energy output will be equivalent to 1,000 hydrogen bombs, focused into a beam of plasma traveling at near light speed. The plan was audacious beyond anything humans had ever attempted. Using the sun itself as a weapon, they would create the most powerful directed energy attack in galactic history. Empire shields and armor designed to withstand conventional weapons would provide no protection against the raw fury of a weaponized star. Chancellor Vexthul stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, as his fleet emerged from hyperspace around the Sol system. The sight before him was exactly what he had expected. Earth's pathetic fleet was nowhere to be seen, and the planet itself showed no signs of defense. The humans had finally learned the futility of resisting the Empire's might. "Deploy the fleet in bombardment formation," Vexthul ordered. "We will surround their world and destroy it slowly, ensuring that every species in the galaxy witnesses the fate of those who defy us." The Empire fleet moved into position around Earth with the precision of a military organization that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Their ships formed concentric spheres around the planet, each layer designed to prevent any escape while maximizing the firepower that could be brought to bear. It was a formation that had never failed in 3 millennia of warfare. Hidden throughout the outer solar system, 47 massive installations that had taken 2 years to build began their final preparations. Each installation was the size of a small city, built into asteroids and moons where the Empire fleet could not detect them. At the heart of each installation was technology that pushed the boundaries of what was possible, even for humanity's rapidly advancing science. Susan Blake watched from her position near Jupiter's moons as the Empire fleet settled into their attack formation. Everything depended on timing and the hope that Empire arrogance would work in humanity's favor. The aliens expected Earth to surrender or die fighting with conventional weapons. They had no idea what was really waiting for them. "All installations report ready," Kevin announced. "Solar magnetic field manipulation is at maximum power. We can maintain the focused beam for approximately 6 minutes before the installations overload. 6 minutes to destroy the largest fleet ever assembled." Susan knew it was possible because the Empire had made a fatal error. They had positioned their ships in a perfect sphere around Earth, which meant they were also positioned in a perfect sphere around the sun. When the solar flare erupted, there would be nowhere for them to run. "Jake, are you ready for your part?" Susan asked. Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system from his hidden position on Luna. He and his team had spent months infiltrating Empire communication networks, and they were prepared to deliver the psychological warfare component of humanity's plan. When the Empire fleet was destroyed, every species in the galaxy would know about it within hours. "Transmitters are ready," Jake confirmed. "The moment you fire, we'll broadcast the battle to every world in Empire space. This will be the biggest advertisement for rebellion in galactic history." The Empire fleet completed their deployment and began powering up their weapons for the final bombardment of Earth. Chancellor Vex Thule felt satisfaction as he prepared to end the human threat forever. After this demonstration, no species would ever again dare to resist the Empire. "Begin the bombardment," Vex Thule commanded. "Reduce their world to ash and molten rock." The moment the Empire fleet opened fire on Earth, Susan Blake gave the order. That would change the course of galactic history. "Fire everything," she commanded. Throughout the solar system, 47 installations activated simultaneously. Massive electromagnetic coils generated fields powerful enough to manipulate the magnetic structure of the sun itself. The star that had given life to Earth for billions of years became a weapon of unimaginable destruction. The sun's surface erupted in a directed solar flare, unlike anything that had ever occurred naturally. Plasma heated to millions of degrees, shot out from the star in a focused beam that encompassed the entire volume of space where the Empire fleet was positioned. The flare traveled at nearly the speed of light, giving the aliens no time to react or escape. The results were beyond devastating. Empire shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and particle beams, simply ceased to function when struck by the raw plasma of a weaponized star. Ship hulls that could withstand nuclear weapons melted like ice in a furnace. In less than 10 minutes, the greatest fleet ever assembled was reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas. Chancellor Vex Thule had just enough time to understand what was happening before the Eternal Dominion was consumed by solar fire. His last thought was a realization that shook him to his core. These humans had not just defeated the Empire, they had made the Empire's greatest strength into its greatest weakness. The very size of the fleet that was supposed to guarantee victory had ensured complete destruction. On Earth, billions of humans watched through their underground shelters as the sky lit up with the death of the Empire fleet. The solar flare was visible even in daylight, a second sun that announced to the galaxy that humanity would not be conquered. But the true impact of the battle was just beginning. Jake Morrison and his team immediately began broadcasting footage of the Empire's destruction to every world in galactic space. The images of 10,000 ships being consumed by solar fire spread faster than any fleet could travel, carrying a message that would transform the galaxy. Dr. Kevin Walsh was already working on the next phase of humanity's plan: the solar manipulation. Technology did not just work on Earth's sun. Every star in the galaxy could potentially be turned into a weapon, and humanity now had the knowledge to do it. They sent a simple message to the surviving Empire leadership on their capital world: surrender, unconditionally, or watch as we turn your suns into weapons against your worlds. You have 24 hours to respond. The message reached Zephyr Prime at the same time as the news of the fleet's destruction. The Empire's surviving leaders found themselves facing a choice that no galactic power had ever confronted: surrender to a species they had considered primitive, or face the possibility that their own stars could be turned against them. Ben Carter's intelligence networks reported the chaos that was spreading throughout Empire space. Without their main fleet to enforce order, rebellions were erupting on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. The Empire's subject species, inspired by humanity's impossible victory, were throwing off centuries of oppression with a fury that shocked their former masters. Susan Blake stood in the command center of the Independence, watching as the expanding plasma cloud that had once been the Empire fleet slowly dispersed into space. Humanity had won the greatest military victory in galactic history, but she knew that the real battle was just beginning. The Empire was not just a military force, it was a civilization that controlled thousands of worlds and trillions of beings. Destroying their fleet was only the first step in building something better to replace them. Humanity had proven they could defeat tyranny, but now they would have to prove they could build freedom. President Maria Santos stood before the assembled representatives of over 2,000 worlds in the Great Hall of the Galactic Senate on the planet Unity. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the Empire fleet, and the galaxy was transforming in ways that no one could have imagined. The massive chamber buzzed with the voices of hundreds of different species, all of them working together to build something that had never existed before: a free, galactic civilization. Admiral Susan Blake walked through the corridors of the Federation, peacekeeping station orbiting Unity, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The transition from Empire to Federation had not been smooth, but it had been surprisingly rapid. Without the Empire's military might to enforce obedience, their subject species had embraced freedom with an enthusiasm that sometimes worried the humans who had started this revolution. Dr. Kevin Walsh worked in his laboratory aboard the research Station Prometheus, developing new applications for stellar manipulation technology under the strict oversight of the Galactic Science Council. His discovery had given humanity the power to turn stars into weapons, but he was determined to find peaceful uses for the same technology. The ability to control stellar energy could solve the power needs of entire civilizations. Commander Ben Carter stood in the intelligence center of the Federation Security Service, monitoring communications from the edge of the galaxy, where scout ships had detected something that could threaten everything they had built. The reports were disturbing, describing a fleet of unknown ships approaching from outside the galaxy itself. Humanity's victory over the Empire had attracted attention from an even more dangerous enemy. Maria Santos called the Senate session to order, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite its size. She had been Earth's ambassador to the emerging Federation before being elected as its first president, and she understood better than most how fragile their new civilization really was. Building a government that represented thousands of different species was proving almost as difficult as defeating the Empire had been. We gather today to address a threat that could destroy everything we have built, Maria announced to the assembled delegates. Our scout ships have confirmed the approach of what appears to be an invasion fleet from another galaxy. The Andromeda Empire has been watching our galaxy for centuries, and they have decided that our rebellion against tyranny threatens their own plans for conquest. The chamber erupted in concerned voices as representatives from hundreds of species discussed the implications of this news. Many of these beings had never known freedom before humanity's victory, and the thought of facing another empire filled them with fear. But others, particularly those who had fought alongside humans against the Galactic Empire, showed the kind of determination that had made the rebellion successful. Admiral Blake received the signal to address the Senate through her communication link with the planetary surface. Her image appeared on the massive screens around the chamber as she spoke from the peacekeeping station above them. The Andromeda Empire's fleet consists of approximately 50,000 ships, each one more advanced than anything the Galactic Empire possessed, Susan reported. However, our intelligence suggests that they have made the same mistake as their predecessors. They studied the old empire and believe they understand our capabilities based on outdated information. The truth was both encouraging and terrifying. The Andromeda Empire had been observing the Milky Way for over 1,000 years, but their information came from studying the Galactic Empire's technology and tactics. They had no idea that humanity had taught the galaxy to fight with creativity, rather than just superior firepower. Dr. Walsh spoke from his laboratory, his image joining Susan's on the Senate chamber screens. His discovery of stellar manipulation had made him one of the most important scientists in galactic history, but he remained focused on the practical applications of his work rather than the fame it had brought him. We have shared stellar manipulation technology with 17 allied species under strict controls, Kevin reported. Each of these civilizations now has the ability to turn their home stars into defensive weapons. The Andromeda Empire may have superior numbers, but they will face something they have never encountered, an entire galaxy that knows how to fight as humans fight. The Senate session continued for hours as representatives debated strategy and resource allocation. The Federation was still young and fragile, but it had advantages that no previous galactic government had possessed. Instead of ruling through fear and overwhelming force, it functioned through cooperation and shared knowledge. Commander Carter's intelligence reports painted a picture of an enemy that was both more and less dangerous than the old Galactic Empire. The Andromeda Empire possessed superior technology and massive fleets, but they were also rigid in their thinking and slow to adapt. They had conquered their own galaxy through methodical application of superior force, never facing an enemy that could match their creativity. The Andromeda Empire expects to face the same kind of resistance they encountered in their home galaxy, Ben reported to the Federation leadership. Primitive species with limited technology and no coordination between worlds. They have no experience fighting an integrated defense network that spans thousands of star systems. The Federation's response to the Andromeda threat demonstrated how much the galaxy had changed since humanity's first contact with alien life. Instead of each species fighting alone, they coordinated their efforts through the new government that Maria Santos led. Resources flowed freely between worlds, and scientific knowledge was shared openly among allies. On the former Galactic Empire capital of Zephyr Prime, Admiral Kethvar worked alongside human engineers to integrate Zephyrian crystal technology with Federation defensive systems. The old Empire's military leaders had been given a choice after their defeat: join the Federation as equals or face trial for their crimes against countless species. Most had chosen cooperation, bringing their knowledge and experience to the common defense. The Crystal Resonance Network is operational, Kethvar reported to the Federation Command Center. We can coordinate defensive actions across the entire galaxy in real time. The Andromeda Empire will face unified resistance rather than isolated worlds. The transformation of former enemies into allies had been one of the Federation's greatest successes. Species that had fought each other for millennia learned to work together when faced with the common goal of maintaining their freedom. Zephyrians brought their advanced technology, while other species contributed their own unique capabilities to the common defense. Jake Morrison stood in the communications center on Luna, preparing to broadcast what he hoped would be the last great battle message in galactic history. His experience with alien psychology had made him the Federation's chief propaganda coordinator, and he understood how to use information as a weapon more effectively than anyone else in human space. All Federation worlds are ready to receive the battle broadcast, Jake announced. When the Andromeda fleet arrives, every species in the galaxy will watch as we demonstrate that freedom cannot be conquered by force. The Andromeda Empire's fleet arrived at the edge of the Milky Way exactly as Federation intelligence had predicted. Their ships were massive and beautiful, incorporating technology that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. But their tactics were predictable, following the same patterns that had worked in their home galaxy for millions of years. The battle began in the void between galaxies, where Federation forces had established defensive positions using mobile stellar manipulation platforms. The Andromeda fleet approached in perfect formation, confident that their superior technology would overwhelm any resistance. They were wrong. The first surprise came when the Federation fleet revealed that they were not fighting alone. Every major species in the galaxy had contributed ships and crews to the defense, creating a combined fleet that represented the best technology and tactics of thousands of civilizations. Human creativity had been combined with Zephyrian crystal technology, Altarian energy weapons, and dozens of other innovations. The second surprise came when Dr. Walsh activated the stellar manipulation weapons. Instead of using local stars, the Federation had brought their own artificial stellar cores, miniaturized versions of natural stars, unleashed focused plasma beams that could destroy entire squadrons of enemy ships. The Andromeda Empire found themselves facing weapons they had never imagined possible, but the greatest surprise was how the Federation forces fought. Instead of the rigid formations and predictable tactics that the Andromeda Empire expected, they faced an enemy that adapted constantly and fought with imagination rather than just technology. Human tactical doctrine had been learned by every species in the galaxy, creating a combined force that was far more than the sum of its parts. The battle lasted for 3 days, and covered thousands of cubic light-years of space. When it ended, the Andromeda Empire's invasion fleet was destroyed, and their survivors were faced with the same choice that had been offered to the Galactic Empire: surrender and join the Federation as equals, or face the consequences of continued aggression. Most chose to surrender.